You know the old saying, selling like hotcakes? What does that even mean? What is a hotcake anyway? They should change it to selling like Hondas, because right now Hondas are selling faster than ever. Probably because they're so rugged, long-lasting, and fuel-efficient. And if you want one, you should get to your local Honda dealer right away. Check out the 8-passenger Pilot, or maybe the adventurous Passport. But you gotta do it fast, because Hondas are selling like, well, Hondas. New models are arriving now. Don't wait. See your local Honda dealer today.
Right Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
Always have to wait to the trill at the end of the keyboard there. Welcome to Right Night. It is Saturday, May the 9th. I'm Travis Sivart, and I am author of a bunch of stuff, but what I'm really excited about this week is I got some bookmarks in. So I'm very happy about those.
Yay!
Yeah. So I can spread them around and spread the love and the joy. Robin, how are you? Good to see you. Let me go ahead and let everybody else introduce themselves and their projects, either their current work or the book of their choice. So we'll just go around the circle. Directly above me here is Michael.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm an independent author and illustrator, and one of my works is Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters. It's a folkloric fantasy on the high seas. I recently released the ebook version of this and the audiobook version. I just announced on my Instagram that it's coming very soon. I recorded it myself and did all the character voices, and I'm very excited.
1, 2,
Fun
5,
stuff.
Very good. And just over there beside Michael is Tempe.
Hi, I'm Tempe Wade. I'm the author of the Timely Revolution book series, which is a time travel fantasy adventure series that takes you back to 18th century America and the Revolutionary War and the Culper Spies and George Washington and all sorts of fun people.
Excellent. And then last but not least, just over here beside me, Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Kennedy. I've been a technical writer for about 25 years. I'm the author of Persona Non Grata, the first book in the Ships of Valor series. That's me.
Very good. Now, before we get rolling on the topic, I want to remind everybody that noise right there is meaning Travis wants to read some comments for the folks who popped in. Folks such as today, we have Rabin Wrights, a great streamer in his own right, no pun intended there. And I'm going to do a quick shout out for him, as well as John of Conquest Publishing. Chris has popped in.
Hi, John.
There's Cavalon there on your screen. Princess Shiera says, been a while since I tuned in. Great to see everybody. And Danny Adventures have given a woo congrats. For anybody who is watching, don't forget, if you missed part or all of the show, you can pick it up on many and varied podcasting places, including Spotify and iHeartRadio, and about 8 other places. If you're listening on a podcast, there's Spacey Tracy. Hey! If you're listening to us on the podcast, don't forget you can join us live Saturday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, at twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk. There we go. I think I got it all. Is that everything, guys? Are we good with that? The other thing I want to tell all of our viewers, live or after the fact, don't forget we have people on here who are attempting to live the dream of writing for a living. So if you're watching us live, make sure you click those links, share them with people, let people know what you think of these writers. And honest opinions are fair opinions. We like the honest opinions. What you tell people instead of just sharing a link makes all the difference. People listen to you because you're you, not because you put up a link. And thank you for all the support. First and foremost, the support of just showing up. Oh my God, we've already got almost a dozen people just a couple minutes into the show, and that is exciting. Danny says, Waves, excited to catch another Right Night with you awesome folks. Danny was a great addition last week. Now, Tempe, Princess Shira is your friend, right?
Yes, that's Samantha Parrish.
Now,
who is a writer too.
Samantha, go and post a link if you like. And, Sapphire Fox joined us. Good to see you. Any other streamers that are hanging out in chat, feel free to do !me, !me, and let each other see where we all come from, just to support the community, and it's a little bit we can give back right now to all of you. Danny Adventures. Anybody know Danny, or is Danny one of the folks who just came from another channel and hung out with us? I think she came from another channel. I think. Okay, must be. Nobody's claiming you, Danny. You're all mine.
Thanks for joining us, Danny.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whoever you are, we love you.
Like
yeah, you rock.
Last week, Danny was a great addition with a lot of good stuff added in. Now, here's what I want to ask our viewers. What are you guys reading and or writing? Let us know in chat. I'm not going to read them all out loud for everybody listening and viewing, but let's create that conversation and that community right here in our chat while the four of us ramble on about other stupid stuff. Yeah, it's I've definitely noticed that, Robin. So tonight's topic is, because I'm done rambling, guys. Thanks for letting me go on there. Book to movie adaptations, because this is something we have touched on a lot. Now, what I'd like to do in the creative hour is maybe talk about how we would take our own books and the changes making them into a movie. And then in technical hour, look at every other movie, book to movie that we've seen that we just love or hate, and why. And keep in mind, the biggest change, for me in my mind right now, when taking your book and putting it into a movie, you can't go into inner dialogue. And also, you can't spend 3 pages laying out a scene and that kind of stuff. Because that's 1 8-second pan of the camera and the whole scene's been laid out. So it definitely takes content and makes it smaller. I couldn't think of the intelligent word.
A point on that, Travis.
Yeah.
Inner dialogue can be done well. If anybody's watched the TV series Burn Notice, they do inner dialogue extremely well. The lead character acts as the narrator for the shows themselves, and it survived 7 seasons.
Another show that does a really good job with that is Psych.
Can we move this?
He's picking up the stuff like that. Yeah.
Can we move this to a second hour? But well, no, I don't know. Hold on, I might be cutting this short quick. How would you do it? Let's talk about your books. Taking your books and making the movies, because this stuff is definitely ties into both sides. I think, creative and technical. So no, I shouldn't cut it. I don't think I should cut it off. It's with narration, Aaron. Though you can't do that a whole bunch. You can't. If every movie had narration, we would start going freaking nuts. Or TV series. It has to be a rare tool.
Absolutely.
And
the thing is, we want it to be different. We want to have other stuff pop in there and make it work. So in Psych, that mechanic works great.
Yeah.
In Burn Notice, the lead-in works really great. Hell, even Star Trek, Captain's Log, Stardate such and such, it's a narration tool. And it's used sparingly, but it's used as a touchstone for you. So it's one of those things, you hit it each time in a specific way, and it works well. Whereas if you tried to overuse it or use it incorrectly, it won't work. As an example, Winslow Hoffner, he could end up using a lot of these things like a log or a journal, or as he's talking to the journalist in there, and it's kind of the lead into how things are happening because he's telling the story there, and then you segue into the events.
Oh, definitely. I've thought about this a lot actually. How I would translate it, because, and when you have film that takes those cues from writing and adapts some of those aspects. It's kind of like how we kind of adapt some aspects of film. We have a cinematic idea. Like I'm very influenced by pacing, and
The current book I'm reading, he is constantly mentioning the lighting, and if you guys are familiar with filmmaking, they talk about the undercast lighting for villain and the overcast for hero. he is constantly describing how there's a light source below the villain, and it just, he's got the shaded eyes. So yeah, we definitely can.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So there are ways we can take cues from film and adapt it to our work as much as film can take cues from writers. And
Well, a guy you knew in the Marine Corps, he was studying to do filmography. And he said, okay, there's this great book, and it talks about how as people walk into a room, the lights turn on, and they'll kind of stage in. It's automatic, but in a film, you can set it up to where things just kind of happen. Minority Report does a great job of this with. Excuse me, sorry about that. With the advertisements, as he's walking through, and you start seeing the things pop up that's targeted towards him. It's an interesting mechanic, and it's one of those things to think kind of out there. Ready Player One does a pretty decent job of that. They're thematically the same, but entirely different books and movies.
Now, Tempe, Tempe had raised her hand like a couple minutes ago. Did you have more to add to that?
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just going back to what you were talking about, Burn Notice. Burn Notice does an excellent job of giving the advantage, from the perspective from a spy, and why a spy does what he does and how he handles that. If anybody's never watched that show, it's a great show. And but that was a unique perspective that they went with that, and it worked very well for them. And the same thing with Psych. The way with Sean, when he picks up on clues and it kind of dings and he zooms in on it, he doesn't have to say anything. He just they just show it, and that's how they you pick up on it that way. So
they did visual highlighting inside the TV show.
Exactly. And and I think probably as writers, we do more of, that's why a lot of stuff in books is the villain has to tell why he did what he did, was because it's the easiest way to just get that information out there. Like they did in the old movies when they had to explain why they wanted world domination.
Well, I mean, narration, exposition, dialogue, and various ways to convey points across there. And
did you want to finish that thought before I read comments?
These are all techniques that we use, and it's just one of those. It's a great way to do things, and it's all about conveying information. What's the mechanic that we're going to use to do it? That's really what it boils down to.
In a few comments, Rabin says, and much of setting an exposition can become mise-en-scene. The difference is that the director carries the load that the writers don't. And also, Danny says, inner dialogue, if it's part of the premise of the show, does okay, but certainly I don't want to hear from every main character. IIRC MacGyver has the intros, problem solving via flashbacks that he narrates. Those shows what he's thinking about and how he makes decisions. A lot of mysteries do that. And let's see here. Princess Shiera says, the Netflix series, did an intriguing take on the narration idea, using narration to the advantage from a dark character with an accurate modern commentary of his stalking narration.
Can I throw back one old school, because
Please.
I've been watching it the past few nights? Magnum P.I.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I think with narration
in the bigness of it,
is done right, we tend to adore it, because it does give you that inner dialogue. It connects you more to the character. Just like in a book, and I know, Aaron, bringing it back to our books, your book is all done first person. So a narration type feel or situation might be very appealing for yours. Whereas with Michael's, I definitely see voiceover narration for certain flashbacks and scenes, particularly in Winslow there.
Yeah. That's how I would do it. I have thought about this, and now the main character, it's written in third person limited, so we can hear the main character's thoughts, John, the journalist. But I think where narration would come into play would be where John, because in the book we're sitting like right beside John and listening to the story, and Winslow's painting the picture. with his words through the dialogue. So I would still want Winslow to tell the story, but I think we would soundbridge and have his voice narrate then visual representation, actually paint the picture, like what we are seeing in our heads as he's telling that story, but still have him tell the story, because that's so important. And that's a way to seize the visual medium of the story. I also, in the second chapter, The Trouble with Mermaids, there's a part where the audience has one idea of what he's talking about, and then he clarifies, and so they all think that the mermaid that he's speaking about is beautiful, and then he's like, I never said she was pretty. This is a flippin' fish girl, Keelan. and then the whole description changes. So I think it would be funny if we were to convey that visually, to have the narration, but then just have just the character morph into something hideous.
Michael.
Yeah.
I think a beautiful way to do yours is first of all episodic and a serial style, maybe on Netflix or whatever, but in the fashion of a series of unfortunate events, where you can have a thought bubble appear and show the beautiful mermaid and then morph into this other thing, or you can do the Scooby-Doo wavy lines and go back into a memory with the voiceover continuing and come back right to the current spot where you already were, and even have the interruptions and narrations of the dialogue of the other characters interrupting him as they ask questions and whatnot, and have the characters in the flashback react to, I think that could
it'd be really neat. How would you, which of your guys' book do you think is most prime for adaptation? Which thing that you've written?
I've done a lot of technical stuff, so none of that.
Aaron's writing for National Geographic now.
Right. Persona non grata would work as kind of a more of a serial type thing, but you end up with a Lord of the Rings thing happening there, where you're trying to pull in all this other stuff that's not in the books, in the Prime books, to make it work. And it would be a better TV show than it is a book. It is where we go. The new project that I'm working on, I mentioned it last week, with the Icarus Black, I think would work great as a serial, and then you do 2 books in a season kind of deal. Quick, to the point, and then move on. Because you can do the same kind of thing. It's a little faster paced, and you get kind of that Monster of the Week or Adventure of the Week feel.
Yeah.
Well, you, Tempe.
Well, you all know me. Mm-hmm. The Timely series, I've got this all worked out in my brain.
Holding out for Henry.
Holding out for Henry.
But are you looking at a series or a movie, and why would this make a good whatever?
Oh, it would have to be a series because of the amount of action that goes on in each book. I mean, if I'm currently working on book 9, and one book basically would translate to a series by the time you add all the Revolutionary War stuff in and the scenes and, all of that, it would be a long withstanding series. But yeah, it would be interesting to see it on screen. I think it would be fun. Especially once it gets into book 2 with the magical stuff, and where you bring in all of this extra stuff. And I even have, between Maggie and her husband, they have a thing where they can hear each other's thoughts. So it would be interesting to figure out how to work that in. And, kind of like people who've been married for a really long time who can just look at each other and know what they're thinking, but they actually hear what the other says, the other is thinking. So
yeah, I think a neat way to visually represent that, so it's not just like ethereal words. You could have them just sort of like in a black space, just pitch dark, and they're just kind of sharing space, or wherever one character is, like the ghost of that other character could appear, or ghost of that other character could appear, behind them and speak to them that way, follow them around and not have to follow the rules of wherever they are physically. So there's
or even just hear it like in their mind, like speaking, like if they're a mile apart and can hear the thoughts, just hear it, somewhere from behind, like floating on the wind type thing, I guess would be probably the best way to handle that.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
Okay. Danny asked Tempe, do you have all the characters cast? And Rabin says, quote, it was a dark and beautiful graveyard Frank found himself in, end quote. Gives character info about Frank that would be hard to convey via a camera. And then Danny also says, sorry to interrupt again, and then you guys carry on and build on this or whatever you're saying.
This is good stuff.
Danny says, some of my stories have telepathy too, so I think any internal thoughts that aren't speech would just muck up that mechanic. Would have to be shown via visual cues on the screen, and some of the speech as well, if it's immediately clear by the look. Which reminds me, for my current manuscript, there's more ways to show more things visually instead of via internal thoughts on the page. Hee hee. So, yeah, guys.
Well, on that note,
good.
Star Wars actually does that really well. The episode 8, where we start seeing what Daisy Ridley and friggin' Adam Driver, their kind of merged consciousness, where they're not the same place. They're kind of force projecting. Or even going back to episode 5 and 6, where we see Space Jesus. Ben
Kenobi.
Thank you. Ben Kenobi in ghost form. We see these things and him doing that. It's once, we got...
Even in episode 4, you had the voice in the head, run, Luke.
Yeah, exactly. And we knew it was a voice in his head, or during the fighter scene, we knew that he was either having a psychotic break or it was, which isn't a bad thing. It's just one of those.
Yes, it is, but not that we knew it.
Well, in terms of the
Don't
story,
judge.
yeah. In terms of the story, he could either be like remembering his master, or it's good that you could have that it can be interpreted in more than one way.
Do you think anybody?
So going back.
Go ahead, Tempe.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I was going back to Danny's question.
Yes.
That she asked.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want my dream cast? If you want my dream cast, I'll name it all. No, but go ahead. So, yeah.
Oh, let's hear it.
Let's hear it. So, okay, I do not have anybody picked out for the female lead. I haven't figured out anybody for that one yet. Okay. But for Gabe, which is the British Revolutionary War soldier, is Henry Cavill. For Major John Andre, I have Tom Hiddleston. For Duncan, I have Jason Momoa, because he's the Scottish Highlander. For Quinn, who is his little brother, I have Adam Crosdell picked out. So, yeah, I've been giving this a little bit of thought.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All-star cast.
All-star cast.
Have any of you ever seen Z Nation?
Yes.
I think that Russell Hodgkinson would be a cool Winslow.
I don't remember him.
And he's the guy who played Doc.
Russell Hodgkins?
Yeah, Russell Hodgkinson.
Oh, he got a very Anthony Hopkins type look to him.
Yeah, he's a funny guy, and he's got great energy. If you look him up, he played the character Doc, and he's cool.
I wouldn't.
Cool guy. I follow him on Instagram.
I wouldn't have mind seeing him do the last half of Dumbledore.
Oh, right.
As opposed to when he kind of became. And I do love the meme for Dumbledore where they're like, when did you switch 3-piece suits for long robes and beanies? John says, on one of the titles we're working on, 2 of the characters can talk through time. We show the prime character drawn normally in this setting and the other one transparent. That's another way to do it, too. Actually have a image of them standing just over
the Lake
shoulder.
House that did something like that.
What's that?
The Lake House did something interesting with that one. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I like both those actors too. Keanu in the right role, mind you, not any role for him.
What about you, Travis? What would be your first if you were to pitch one of your projects for adaptation? Which one would you go to first?
27 pots.
Why are we dropping one thought, Aaron? No, it would be Silver and Smith. I specifically wrote Portals and Silver and Smith with very specific pacing, very specific chapter length to create a very here's an episode type feel. Now, some of it wouldn't work because a lot of it is internalized or travel. What can take up 2,000 words can really be covered in 5 minutes if it's internalized thought and travel. So you don't necessarily need all that. Whereas some other chapters where you have a character who goes into a building on their own, that might take longer to explore on film than it does in the book. But those are two specifically set for it. As for the other ones, I have a lot of anthologies that would make... Like, an individual story could be a whole movie. The way we've seen a lot of Stephen King short stories made into movies. But that would
or
be...
TV series, The Colorado Kid.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar
Which
with that.
became Haven.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of my anthologies... Actually, my first anthology is the only one that's just different stories. Every anthology I wrote after that has a thread going through them. So, for example, Croker Norwich Case Files, which is like Sherlock Holmes meets The Odd Couple, set in a Victorian setting, a bit of a steampunk aesthetic to it. That's... Oh, there we go. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It's that one would be very good because that is... Whether it's movies and grabbing one story for a movie or whether it's a serialization where you could take one story and put it over a 3-episode arc and then continue with the next one because they are chronological. By the way, I do have to say hello to Bobakis who popped in. John mentioned Stephen King sucks and Bobakis defends with you bite your tongue. And I have seen good stuff out of Stephen King and I have seen crap out of Stephen King. I have seen both levels. And what I find for me...
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
With MailChimp, you get a whole lot more than a URL. You get an all-in-one marketing platform to help drive sales. That means you can connect your data to make more informed, smarter decisions. And you get powerful automation tools like our Customer Journey Builder to ensure you never miss an opportunity to turn shoppers into loyal customers. So if you're ready to integrate your marketing and boost sales, get started today at MailChimp.com/smartmarketing. MailChimp, built for growing businesses.
And this is unrelated, total tangent. I like his short stories or his 800-page plus books. The other stuff just kind of falls short for me. But it's his characters I love, not his stories are okay. The characters are what do it for me. But yeah, I have... And I guess maybe we do. Is there anybody that goes, oh, my stuff just wouldn't be good for movies or TV? Any of us feel that way? Okay, yeah. So I look at all my stuff and I'm like, this could work.
Well, no, I try to take the Quentin Tarantino kind of philosophy. Make movies or make books that you would like to read. I'm somewhere between if you were talking stylistically, pardon the cat that just jumped in. I'm somewhere between Harry Harrison's Stainless Steel Rat series and Robert Heinlein. Probably closer to his Juveniles, but friggin' that's the kind of feel and look that I wanted. And Quentin Tarantino, he writes a great action movie, great fast dialogue, because that's the kind of movie he wants to see.
Yeah.
Except for The Hateful Eight. God, that was slow.
Oh, it was.
I wanted to like it a lot more
slow.
than I did, and if we yanked a half hour out of it, maybe 45 minutes, I feel it would have been a better movie. But I couldn't tell you what to yank out of it. I couldn't tell you what.
Oh.
Right. Well, no, I mean, getting to the books to movie adaptation, back to that,
Yeah.
when you take a look at Luke Cage, season 1 of that. It's 10 episodes long. Really, it would have been a much better series if they dropped it to 5 episodes, trimmed it.
I noticed that there were a lot of shows that that they wanted to hit 10 episodes for some reason. And I mean, on Netflix and on certain streaming platforms, the benefit of the platform is that it can be however many episodes you want. You know, you can streamline it massively.
Well, binge psychology is, I think, and this is where we get into game theory and stuff like that.
Okay.
An episode of TV is either 22 or 45 minutes long, with 15 minutes of commercials or 8 minutes, depending on the thing, not including the 30-second intro and outro. So you've got this nice condensed feel, and 30 minutes is an arbitrary time because we just happen to divide our day that way.
Right.
It could be, HBO did a really good job of that with The Sopranos. The episodes were however long the episodes were. But the flip side is when you get into stuff that's made directly for Netflix, what was it? The guy who did Futurama and then he did Disenchanted. Thank you. Futurama is great. It's fast-paced. Any joke that was below a 7 was just cut.
Right.
Whereas if you're watching Disenchanted, it's instead of being 22 minutes with lots of editing to make it the best possible thing, you've got this 30-minute episode, and the jokes are all great, but you got a couple sixes in there instead, and it creates this kind of feel. I think 10 episodes is kind of where they said, okay, this is where we need to be a binge-worthy TV series this amount of time.
Interesting.
I will point at British television. I'm going to name a couple series. Actually, there's one I can't even think of. It had to do with dinosaurs coming through time to the modern thing. But specifically... Yeah. Primeval, yeah. And by the way, as the season went, it went horrible because you're like, I think they changed writers, kind of like Heroes did. But anyhow, Sherlock. Every episode is not the same amount of time. And every episode is kind of a movie. And you're only getting 3 to 5 episodes per season. Misfits is another one. If you look at
an arc.
Right. And that's what you have. You have an arc in Misfits, which is about superheroes. And I swear they were in an empty town. Primeval. Thank you, Danny. Yeah. You get, I think it's 5 episodes the first season. And then each season, it kind of goes up to you at 8 episodes per season, if I'm remembering correctly. And that was nice, because now here's your arc. And that's what they're doing. Tempe, I see you waving. You want me to throw it to you when I'm done?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just finish this thought. Primeval, a similar thing. And to add in a few comments before I pass it over. Danny says, there's a couple comments. Okay, money matters can interfere with the final decision, says Rabin. John says, sometimes contracts require a number of episodes. Danny, Netflix 10 episodes standard for some shows drags out because they're trying to fill a spot. Agree with that. Rabin says, Good Omens was an interesting study in changes for the silver screen. And Danny says, was that British? I thought it was Canadian, but maybe that's just where they were filmed. Danny, America remade Primeval. They also tried to remake Sherlock with Lucy Liu. Elementary. But anyhow, Tempe, all you. Sorry, thank you.
No, I was just trying to remember what was the industry standard like in the 80s and 90s, because there used to be the series like the Thornbirds in North and South, where it was an episode, like a 2-hour episode a week that would go on. Was it like 6 weeks?
That was a mini series, yeah. And that actually wasn't a bad format either. Even like the Stephen King made for TV or a Hallmark made for TV, where you get 2 nights of 2 hours each. Because then essentially you get a long movie.
Yeah. If I remember right, for regular TV series, it's 13 episodes. Things like The Good Place only do 10. And then if it's the expanded stuff, it's 26 and half a year.
Yeah, if it's a full season, 21 to 26, depending if it's an hour long or a sitcom. And it may fall a couple in there, because again, it depends. If you're going on Monday night, if you're a Monday night show, you got shifted because Monday Night Football hit on certain channels and it would move it, etc.
Right, and they would do like I believe it was North and South, they would do a 2-hour episode each night for Monday through Friday for like 2 weeks. Was it something like that? But it's interesting. I guess maybe they bopped off of those standards a little bit when they first started with all these, like the Netflix shows and stuff. But everything's gotten so skewed now.
I say
that
make
it comes down to content.
What it needs to be, which is what I'm seeing with a lot of this stuff from BBC. And that's why I mentioned these shows as British, because they aired on BBC first. So, Danny, they might have been Canadian. I don't know. Aaron?
On that point, I mean, the British and the Canadian both have a better public broadcasting than we do.
Raise your mic just a bit.
Oh, sorry. The British and the Canadian have a better kind of public broadcasting, so they friggin' tap into explicitly British filmmakers, story writers, and things like that, as do the Canadians. Seth Rogen talks about this when he started going out. He tapped into, I can get money from the Canadian government to do my stuff. And you see, it's not necessarily the best, but it's different stuff all across there because it's on Canadian TV. The British side, you see the same thing. Stuff like Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf, every season was a different length. Some of them were 20, some of them were 6, some of them were like 3, and then, this is the half a season or whatever.
Or Doctor Who, previous to the modern iteration. That very much varied anywhere from here's a single 2-hour movie to here's a full length, this and that. So what about our books? Shifting us back for the creative, let's say somebody came to you and went, we're ready to do this. We want you to be part of the creative process. We're not just buying the rights and shoving you away. We want you sitting next to the director, so when we have to do scene rewrites for whatever reason, whether it's length or things like a lot is internalized, how we translate that to screen, how would you want to see your books made into movies? What things do you visualize when you're like, this would be a movie? And Tempe, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. Am I correct on that?
I do, and I'm the first one to say that, I don't want a lot of my stuff changed. Because
since you do have so much and how you have it planned in your head, I was going to ask, is it okay if we take you last? Because you'll take up a lot. So I want to give you that time without us trying to interrupt with our possibly very shorter stuff. Michael, can we start with you?
Oh, sure.
And which book are you looking at? Well, though you can bounce back and forth.
Definitely. I mean, one day I'd love to do World of Dior, but that's so high concept, high budget. I was a film minor, and I remember, and I had written a play once, and when I saw that performed, that was one of the most amazing feelings, to see someone else's take on it and to see other people like embody the characters.
Where was that done?
That was at the end of high school. It was a play. It was a play called Spotless.
Was it done in high school? Was it high school cast?
No, it was Arena Stage in DC.
Wow.
And it was like a dramatic read, but with professional actors. So they were reading it, and it was just so cool. And I remember when I first that was the first time I had ever sat down to write a script, and which was so different for me because I was the fantasy guy, and I would write these big sprawling magical things, and I wrote a script that was like my fantasy stuff. And then my teacher, she said, Mike, imagine that you have to make this yourself on your budget. And I was like, whoa. And then I looked at everything I had written, and I just threw it away. and I made a new. And no. But I realized that budget is important, and feasibility. And I was thinking like, they could do all these things. They could do special lights and stuff.
So you've actually kind of done this then already.
That's the closest I've done like my own like film. I've done my own like short films and stuff. But in terms of like something that I wrote and then having someone else do it, that's and that was such a cool feeling. But I remember thinking, I'm like, okay, this has to be like doable. And then all of the symbolism was within, and I'm gonna publish this one day as like a tiny little book with the characters and the character sheet and stuff. But I remember that was something I kept in mind. So in terms of with that budget in mind, and Winslow came together like so magically and so suddenly that I wasn't even thinking about it. But looking back on it, I realized how perfect it is to adapt into a nice limited series. Every chapter can be an episode. You get like Monster of the Week, like Aaron said, and with the first chapter, I remember thinking I could if I like really stretched my resources that I could even make this, because it's one location, and it's two guys talking to each other, and then most of the budget would go to like the however much I wanted to show the monster, Gambo, the fire-breathing fish. That would be where it would go. So it could be cool to do like a short film, and then if that does well, then to do the rest of them as a series. But definitely as a series, and I've got so many thoughts about it. But just like how to convey, because you really want to seize the visual medium when you make a translation, because that's kind of the point. You get to tell the story in a new way. So you think about colors a lot, like what colors can be symbolic. So I mean, the story of the first chapter. What's that?
Soundtracks also.
Soundtracks. I have that was something I was saving. I was going to ask you guys if any of you have made a playlist for your books, because I have, and something that I think about is the colors of the scenes, and I kind of would want in chapter 1 just for it to be like very blue and stuff, and then to have like along with the fire of Gambo as this monster's coming closer, and as John's belief in Winslow's magical world is shifting for more colors to be introduced to the world. So that's a way
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, in a way, but to just start with lots of blues, and then to have that fire tone, those ochre tones, the warmth, and to sort of match the belief. And that's something I thought about a lot as I'm writing the sequel to Winslow, the first one, and I've suggested it in the imagery. I've mentioned noirish type tones, and
Tempe, I'm
because
sorry.
it's a flashback.
I thought you had the most to say. This is. I would have let you go first if I realized. Go on, Mike. I'm loving it.
I'm sorry.
No, this is great.
But I remember, because there's this one effect that films do where everything's black and white except for one item. So as I was writing the first chapter of Winslow 2, because this is back in the day. This is when Winslow was on his first ever assignment, and with this agency that we sort of learn more about in the first book. And I sort of just imagine it all being black and white except for the yellow of the caution tape and the yellow of the insignia of the agency. Vince Gilligan is a great guy you want to look at. If you want to look at colors, look at Vince Gilligan, because he has like his whole, and you just kind of know, you start freaking out when you see the color yellow on the screen. It's like, oh, something bad is about to happen, because he's created his own language through his colors. So color's a cool way to think about it. Music, I've got this playlist. I've got a few playlists that I want. I really like this song "Scallywag" by Gaelic Storm. Yeah,
great song.
Like, I think it could be the theme song to Winslow easily.
That'd be a nice win for you.
Yeah, and angles are something else that you guys might want to think about. Like, what can you do with angles? Like, especially if you're usually in first person, this is your camera, and when you're free, because you're not going to do, unless you want to do like a hardcore Henry where you're actually in the head of the character, but you get to hover, you get to do so much more stuff. So that's something to think about.
Rebel Without a Cause does that.
What's that?
Rebel Without a Cause does that. There's old James Dean movie, but I think there's 3 that really highlight what's going on. But when you viewing it on him, it'll come from a different angle to create a disjointed feel of the film at those specific points.
Yeah,
and I can read one comment real quick for you, Michael.
Yeah.
By the way, Tempe, I don't know if you saw it, but Danny said I love it after you described your cast, by the way. Danny,
thanks, Danny. I love them too.
now says that's a neat way to consider it. Keep enough detail in the story to bring it to life, but revise back down so there aren't many crazy things that it can't be that it can't be brought to life. Two great movies. The first Sin City does that with only one dash of color, and Schindler's List, where the only color in the film.
At Capella University, you're in control of your education. With the game-changing FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines and move at your own pace. The faster you move, the more you save. Visit capella.edu to learn more.
With MailChimp, you get more than a URL. You get an all-in-one marketing platform to help drive sales. With things like data-driven recommendations and powerful automation tools. Get started today at MailChimp.com/smartmarketing. MailChimp, built for growing businesses.
Is a little girl's red dress that is shown in 2 or 3 different scenes. And the final scene that you see this red dress is in a pile of bodies.
Wow.
So that's it's going black and white with that one touch of color. It definitely gives an emotion that you might not have ever considered otherwise.
Right.
Okay, Michael, go on about perspective. Or we could pass it to Aaron real quick, because your call.
Oh yeah, I'll rein my stuff in if any of you guys want to take it away for a while.
We'll pass it to Aaron and then Tempe, and then in the second hour when we're talking about books and movies we like, feel free to bring it back up and work it in, because I'm loving what you're doing here, and I spent 2 hours on each of you alone. Aaron.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to think about.
So the new project I'm working on, and I was like, okay, and I took a page from Travis's book, and I think a lot of this is going to work well for him as well, is we're trying to create that fast-paced feel, episodic in nature. I love the idea of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and okay, here's this, and here's what, previously in Buffy, they did a quick intro to get you back on that piece. So I'd probably lean towards 1 or 2 episodes for a book in this series. I was outlining it to these guys earlier. We're looking at 9 books, 3 arcs each, and 3 arcs within each book itself. So we're talking about a quick up and down along one book, which brings you to the second book, which kind of reverses things like Empire Strikes Back did, and then takes you into the Jedi. But that first arc is also your Star Wars. It's your upbeat piece, and then when you get into the second piece, you reverse it again and you're dark again.
You ended at the beginning of the third act where it's very down and dangerous and dark.
Exactly. You're changing up the style over and over again to keep things new, interesting, get your tempo going. But each episode, if you will, has to be self-contained. What happens if they just stopped there?
Right.
Kind of that idea, because
I really appreciate that. I hate putting a book down at the end and I've got to wait for the next book, not because the characters are going on, because the story didn't get finished. I understand stories go on and there's something else that happens, but to end a book where I'm like, I don't even have a complete story, it annoys me.
What my big thing is, if I was watching the show on a Monday night back in the 80s, it needs to finish. I need to have resolution. I can't be left hanging. It's okay if I've got, kind of you want to see a little bit more of this next week. You want to keep wanting more. You know the next one's coming.
Right.
But you want to build this up. But go back to Travis's original point, if I had freaking kind of not creative control, but creative input on it, there's an old John Candy movie years ago, and it talks about every TV series having a Bible. And these are kind of the flow put, a start and a finish of how you're going to get there, and kind of beats along the way. The Good Place is kind of like that, because a lot of these TV shows are written by committee. Not necessarily a bad thing, but they've got a showrunner that kind of keeps everything going the way it's supposed to. But you may have, let's say we were writing a TV show, Michael will write one episode, and then we'll critique it and make it better. And then the following week, Travis is going to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And my big goal is not that it matches my vision inside the book; it's that it's thematically correct. And a great example of that is the TV show The Magicians by Les Grossman. They did one season per book. Everything kind of matches your expectation, but it's not the same. You get the same look, you get the same feel, but it's not necessarily the same story. It's an adaptation. It's kind of like in music where we've got this great song, and then somebody does a cover on it, and the cover's even better.
Yeah, which is rare, but it happens.
It does. Well, some people aren't necessarily well suited to it. Take a look at all the songs that Prince wrote that he didn't perform.
Right. Yeah, you need somebody else's voice to express it.
Exactly. Or they may be able to have a better technology or better media to kind of perform this thing in. And this kind of goes back to Travis's thing at the beginning. We're thinking cinematically. Okay, what would this look like on a screen, and how are people going to interpret this to kind of get it there?
Yeah.
That was kind of a failure I had with Persona non grata, but a lot of it's internal dialogue. Our protagonist, he's really the narrator, because the primary protagonist is not Eri himself, it's Hart. Hart's the hero of the story. Eri is the narrator telling the story.
Just so everybody knows, Hart is a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of goes back to Michael's point in regards to make it yourself on your own budget. If you got to have skin in the game. It's one of those, I got an unlimited budget. You're going to end up with unlimited crap.
I wish Elizabeth was here for the budget thing, because that is something she is constantly dinging, being a film writer.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
One of the a great group that did that was Broken Lizard, Super Troopers. They had say what you will. It is entertaining. It delivers what it promises.
I like it.
But the crew, so do I.
Mm-hmm.
Broken Lizard wrote this, and then had to get funding. Well, they went to this one guy. He goes, "Okay, how much do you need?" And I think the number was like $30 million. He's like, "Okay, I'll give you 27. You got to get the other 3 yourself. You got to have skin in the game, because if you don't,
right,
your product's not going to be good."
Yeah.
And we see this documentaries end up like this as well. Nobody makes money on a doc. They just don't.
They do now. Look at Netflix. Absurd Planet.
They'll break even, and they might make money on their next project, is where I think it is. But the doc itself is kind of it's a loss leader back to the business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of cool doing that. But and again, back to the underlying point, if I was going to do this myself, I'd try to get maybe a burn notice feel. Go ahead, Travis.
For Persona non grata, I'd almost think a total rewrite and make the narrator Hart in the series or movie, and have that internal dialogue of the ship as he for Hart, right?
Yeah. Hart is a he.
As he watches these other people working around him and doing these other things and whatnot. So, anyhow, Aaron, go ahead and finish up, because I really want to pass it to Tempe. I feel so bad, because I thought we were going to be short. And
I want to hit on something that I think would work great for Winslow. Is if you take a look at the Netflix series, A Series of Unfortunate Events.
Mm-hmm.
They did each small book. The books are only this big. Each one was an episode. They changed it, the descriptive, into this beautiful cinema. And it worked well. And they kept pretty true to the damn original.
Mm-hmm.
But it hits all those kind of points back where we've got a narrator. He appears on screen telling us this story, and he steps back. They use the color palette very, very well in there. All of those. But I'm done. Freaking back to 10.
The color
I'll have
palettes
much more on the technical side.
color palettes can definitely influence the whole feel of a movie. Tempe, thank you for your patience. I apologize again, but I am very interested to hear your thoughts on how you would help guide your book into a movie or a series. And what are you looking at, movie or series for yours?
It would have to be a series because of the length of it. You know, with it being at least 9 books, maybe more at this point. You know, because I can write as long as they can film.
Can you write as fast as they can film?
I can write as fast as they can film.
Well, once you're sitting on set, it's hard to write as much as you do now because you're so... You know how it is when we go to social media and how much time that takes out of our day, let alone if you're making a film.
Yeah, but I work between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m., so, you know, sleep's overrated. But, so, you know, for anybody that's interested in a book to turn into a show, I'm telling you this is set. When I wrote A Timely Revolution, the series, I wrote it like I was watching a movie. Very much so. It starts out on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Guess what? You can film on the beach for free. Colonial Williamsburg is already set up. You can use their buildings, you know, to film. They used them for Turn when they were down here. And that was very much in my mind when I wrote the books. Philadelphia has an old section, you know, from where the Culper Spy Ring stuff was the beginning. You can film up there for Philadelphia.
Or in Fredericksburg.
Revolutionary War. Fredericksburg,
They
yes.
still have the
And there are
slave
plenty
market.
of, yeah, they have the reenactors are here in town.
Right.
They have their own uniforms. They have everything they need to step in, and they often do when they film something for, you know, for the Revolutionary War, or for a TV series or anything. They just call up people who already work for Colonial Williamsburg and put out a casting call, and they, you know, they come and they fill in. So that stuff's already set. You know, and as far as paying your actors is going to be the big part. Personally, I'm willing to offer an extra bedroom in my house to Henry Cavill, so you won't have to pay lodging there.
So is your husband going to be
just to cut down on cost?
Of him above his above the bed.
Just to cut down on cost.
Is your husband going to be upset that he has to sleep in the spare room when Henry gets to master?
We don't talk about that.
My bad. Go on. Sorry.
So, you know, and there's a couple other actors I'll be happy to toss, you know, space over to there as well. But yeah, my stuff is with so much historical stuff. It's already here. It's easy to film. It's just bring in the camera crew and set it up and do it. And I sit down many days at Colonial Williamsburg and watch them film, where they'll just bring everybody in. You know, where there's asphalt, they'll just throw down hay just to kind of cover it. And that's what they do. And they use, you know, they'll pop off one building and call it something else, but it works. Right. So, although I will say in turn, there was one episode where they were filming in the coffee house, and I did see a bicycler go by on the window.
No.
And I'm like, oh, they missed that one.
Time travel.
Time travel. You can always do it.
Tempe, I'm curious. Oh, thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. Here's your face. It's throwing the bits. Tempe, I'm curious. Now, I haven't read all of your books. I haven't even honestly finished book 1. My apologies for that. But I assume there is some great cinematic scape and scope in some of the scenes. So when doing these things, I think of, what was it, Follow the Mohicans? Is that the name of the film I'm thinking of?
Last of the Mohicans?
Thank you, Last of the Mohicans. You have some beautiful scenery in there, some beautiful shots. I mean, Lord of the Rings level scenery. Is there stuff like that you're looking at also? And how much of that would be in there?
The character's main house, the house that she buys, is actually a fictional house. I didn't have anything in mind. I have the picture in my mind, but nothing specific. But it's on an estate, and the river runs by it, and there's a Native American tribe on it as well. So, I have all of those shots in my head as well. And yeah, but we're right here on the James. We have riverfront. It's easy to film. We have plenty of here in Williamsburg alone and around Jamestown. We have everything you need to film this. As far as scenery and everything. So
some of the stuff wouldn't be bad using old style paintings and things like that, because we have documentation there to where if you want to go, oh, we're leading into the battle, whatever, you start with a painting and then kind of fade to real.
That would be a nice transition.
Fade away from real.
Yeah. That would definitely give you the modern
York
feel to historic. Tempe, what were you saying?
Right. And we have Yorktown here where the battles were, and that's in the books. There are, as the series progresses, there's a point where they're at Mount Vernon meeting with George Washington. Well, we've got Mount Vernon. So, all of this stuff can actually be as historically accurate on film as I wanted it to be in the book.
Fun fact.
So, because
sometimes
I have that visual.
Fun fact is sometimes it's cheaper to build a set than rent the location.
Yeah.
So, and also it lets you do more with it, especially if there's a battle where you're blowing out a wall or anything like that. You don't want to do that with the Colonial Williamsburg set.
Well, and I don't really put the specifics of the battles in. It's most of, she's walking down the street, or she meets like the Carter brothers who actually own the Unicorn's Horn. That we still have the building there. We still have where the market was. All of it's all set up. And I've come to believe that these touristy places like this, the historical places, actually invite more film people in because it gives them more, publicity, and it brings more people in to see them. The days that CW filmed, Colonial Williamsburg filmed for a turn or whatever show they're filming for at the time, that place is always packed because people are there watching. They come, and while they're there, they buy the tickets, they go in, they check out the buildings, and they hang out and spend a couple of days. Same thing with the battlefields. Battlefields aren't visited as much as they used to be, but when something like this happens, it brings the people out. So it's a win-win for everybody. I'm just saying.
That's great. Now, we'll move into our second hour, which doesn't mean we can't continue this exact conversation, but I do want to do the reintroductions for each of us. I want to let everybody know I'm the host, Travis Sivart, and I am the author. Currently have one book with a literary agency, waiting to see if it gets accepted, and that is Silver and Smith and the Jazir's Light, which will be a near-future, borderline dystopian world where a middle-aged mercenary who's very withdrawn meets up with a high-energy 20-something female archaeologist who goes by Hank. And they're moving around the world in a very Indiana Jones, Pirates of the Caribbean style, interacting with each other from opposite points of view and bumping head, and collecting what is essentially mystical artifacts. Now, how about you, Michael? Reintroduce.
I was spacing out because I was imagining when you said Indiana Jones, I was imagining the crossfade of the map with the little dotted lines.
I worked that in the book. Hank pulls up her tablet and projects it to a screen, so you actually see like a map, an electronic map, and you have the red line of where they're going. And
so
I want that in the movie.
Perfect time. Yes, excellent. I would want to do that for if World of the Orb ever gets adapted. World of the Orb. Here's another one of my books. Two best friends lost. Modern teens lost in a medieval world of monsters, myths, and magic, set on a harrowing treasure hunt to find Earth again. And my name is Michael Thompson, author, illustrator.
By the way, I would be interested to see Chicken Boy turn into an animated series or animated movies.
Oh, yeah.
Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah. Okay.
I would
Tempe?
love that.
Sorry, I'm trying to move my cat away.
Is she getting it?
She's chewing on a wire, and that's never good. I am Tempe Wade. I'm the author of the Timely Revolution book series, historical time travel fiction series that needs to be made into a TV series. And I'm also working on a fantasy piece that is kind of a cross between Game of Thrones and The Witcher that's coming along very nicely that I hope to be telling you more about very soon.
I'm very
Nice.
interested in beta reading that for you if it's available.
Yes.
It's if you can handle my feedback. If you can't, then I'll read the final product.
I don't know, Travis. You're a little rough on people.
This is why I asked what kind of feedback you want. You want all anyhow, Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Kennedy. I'm author of Persona non grata, the first books in the Ships of Valor series or world. Been a technical writer for about 25 years. Current project that I'm working on is Icarus Black, which is going to be set in the same universe. Oh, thank you, sir. I didn't mention it earlier, but I did buy a copy of Winslow and freaking have been reading it.
Good stuff, isn't it?
It is. The dialogue is outstanding on it.
There we go.
Oh, thank you. I'm being attacked, so thank you.
I'm loading up.
Aaron, finish your intro.
Okay, currently writing the Icarus Black kind of series
Still love the
on
title.
there. And hopefully I'm going to have one of the first ones done by the end of the year.
Wow.
And then I'm hoping for a faster release schedule because it's going to be more condensed.
Rapid release.
Now for the technical stuff, for everybody who are viewing, don't forget you can catch us on podcasts on all the major podcast streaming things, except Pandora. Still waiting to hear back from them. And for those of you listening on the podcast, don't forget you can join us and join in the conversation as you hear when I ring the bell here at twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, most Saturday nights. And
For anybody who wants a little behind the scenes, that's what just happened to me.
oh,
See that? Oh my god.
John asked if anybody can see him holding up all of my books. I did deliver him all the books from a Kickstarter that is long overdue. It's my apologies to all the people who supported that. Sad fact is, guys, I've sent out messages because I have the books. I'm ready to ship them out, and nobody's replying to me and saying, "Hey, send me this book." And I'm like, so catastrophe, says Shiera. So now in this hour, we're going to shift to books we've seen adapted to TV or film, and criticize them or cheer them on or a little of both. And it's I'm sorry, I'm looking at a comment. Weightlifting during the isolation. I'm actually not sure what that's in reference to. Maybe that's to you, Tempe.
John said he had all your books holding him up, and I said that's how you get strong. They're heavy because
There
there's
we
a
go.
shit ton of them.
Sorry, I was focused on what I was babbling about. My bad. So does anybody have a favorite book that was turned into something they love on screen, big or small? Aaron?
Yes, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say all of you love it, and if you don't, get off the show. William Goldman's Princess Bride.
Okay, yes.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Oh God,
It's worth...
I'm so sorry.
That's one...
we're gonna take a slight technical break.
Everything just goes to bars.
Movie night at Aaron's house when this is all over.
There
Yeah.
we go.
Oh,
Definitely worth watching in a group. It's or alone, but especially in a group. What I will say is we watch it with Tempe or Michael or both. We need to make sure we keep our mouth shut through the whole movie. Just wiggle and giggle. Let them.
Oh, we need to live tweet that. Their reactions. You do one, I'll do the other. We'll record their reactions as everything's going on.
I'm very fresh to it. I hardly know what it's about.
Go in like that. That's a great way to go in.
Yeah, that was one of those movies that did not really have a trailer per se, or it wasn't advertised. So you walked into it blind, and then you get, oh, this is frigging awesome.
Just out of curiosity, when was that put out?
Late
80s, I think.
80s. Yeah. See, I wasn't a big movie buff in the 80s. It was movies. I lived in a small town. There wasn't really a movie theater around to go see anything. So
You could pick it up like in the discount bin for $5 to $8 on DVD and Blu-ray now, and it's worth it. It is just, for me, the most. Oh, Chris says it's on Disney Plus. By the way, Rabin mentions The Martian, which I wouldn't mind talking about because that was very well done. But yeah, it's probably the most quotable movie out there in my opinion. Like almost
Ted
every
Cruz
line.
can quote the entire thing.
Yeah, it's not and I don't know. We could do a reenactment of the whole damn thing. You want to be Buttercup or Wesley?
I know the Inigo Montoya line. That's about it.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
My wife's personal business cards say, "Hello, my name is."
So
Gotcha.
what about you, Michael? You got one that you've read the book and you love the screen adaptation.
I can't think of one. I know there are ones that I've come across that I'm like, oh, this is an adaptation. And then I would want to go back and find the source material. Like Happy. Have you ever seen season 1 of Happy?
Yes.
I think
on
it's
Netflix.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's a graphic novel
it's a
originally, I
sci-fi.
believe.
It was a graphic novel, and it's like a weird stylistic noir where he's just check it out. He sees this, he can't tell if he's going crazy or not. He sees this flying blue unicorn,
Teeny.
and it's so interesting. Yeah, it's a noir with
It is dark though, just little forewarning.
it's very dark.
Yeah.
It's very dark, it's very violent. So keep in mind. But the first season is takes place during Christmas.
Yeah, it is cutesy and
And,
gritty at the same time.
That's what's kind of uncanny and interesting about it. And just Christopher Maloney's performance is just so good. He's so expressive.
Yeah.
And grizzled and interesting and damaged. So
There you go.
Yeah, so that's
maybe he might be a second runner-up for Winslow.
Well, I saw him in profile at one point in the snow with this knit cap down, and I was like, oh, that looks a lot. It looks a lot like this.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about him in that way, but also maybe as Scialpi, the antagonist of the book.
Oh.
But anyway.
Rabin mentioned Stardust also.
Oh, Stardust.
But
Yeah, I saw that.
Before we
Long
go
time
on to
ago.
that, Tempe, do you have one that you read the book and you really enjoyed the adaptation?
As a TV series, I have a love-hate relationship with Outlander.
Okay.
I like the books. I wasn't thrilled with who they cast as the main character because she was like nothing in the book. But I enjoy the storyline. I have little issues here and there with other things. But yeah, Outlander is something that I enjoy. I'm sorry, I'm cleaning up my hand. I've got blood going everywhere here right now. I had to throw her out of the room.
So sorry.
She's literally insane. I kid you not.
Well, it's a cat.
It's
and a female one.
She's the demon cat. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, Preacher.
Yeah,
Preacher.
You've got a connection to that one.
Preacher, yeah, that's right. I actually didn't know anything about that show until they used my kit on it, and then I started watching it. So, but yeah, it wasn't that. That was it a book or was it a comic?
Graphic.
I think it was a comic, graphic novel, maybe. Yeah,
correct.
Maybe that's what it was.
And it's still out and being published.
Yeah.
And a few comments, and then we can start talking about the ones we hate. I just figured we'd start on the positive note. Then we could tear the other ones up. Because chat has blown up. They are very excited about this topic. John, Conquest Publishing, says Stephen King sucks now. Of course, Rabin the Martian mentions The Martian. Danny, Pimpin, the Princess Bride. Rabin says Holy Grail and Princess Bride. Mentions Stardust. Says Gaiman seems to pull it off in general. Crichton films are almost always horrible compared to the books. And Shira mentions Preacher, definitely my favorite adaptation, despite minor changes. The flow of the story is consistent and gritty, despite having to be a little bit cleaner than the original story, which is understandable for some of these things, I think. And Danny, last comment, then we're back to us, says, I think Gaiman gets involved too, which helps certainly with the adaptation process, and he does. I recently read, oh my goodness, American Gods. And they had an interview at the end of the audiobook, a 20-minute interview with him, and he mentioned specifically it is a different story. And the first season really sticks to the book, and season 2 really moves away from it. Expanse is the same way. It starts very similar, but by the time you're 5 episodes in, it's a different story. By you're on second, third season, it's a very different story. But that's like the song replay, where we get a different vision. We get to combine things in film over especially a longer series, where they bring in characters that don't appear till book 3. They bring it in the first season, because there is backstory there that you can lead into the whole weaving, threaded plot line.
It's true.
So, and I think, besides, if your only gripe is it doesn't stick exactly to the story, well, I get it, but there's reasons. And give it...
Well, sometimes the format doesn't allow.
Right. Or, yeah, like the whole mention of backstory to characters brought in later books can thread into the base story.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
With MailChimp, you get more than a URL. You get an all-in-one marketing platform to help drive sales, with things like data-driven recommendations and powerful automation tools. Get started today at MailChimp.com/smartmarketing. MailChimp, built for growing businesses.
Yeah, by the way, Aaron just posted the link for Purveyor of the Unusual. Check out Tempe's stuff there.
Thank you, Aaron.
Vampire
Props.
kit that was used on Preacher it's a work of art. It's a beautiful thing.
Very cool.
Check that out. And if you ever catch her at a convention, browse her wares. It's all like handmade. Like even the boxes, if I'm not mistaken, are made, not purchased and filled.
Actually, you won't catch them at conventions anymore because I had too much of little hands tearing them up. So you can only get them online, and they sell out pretty quickly. So I do have one over there that I'm working on right now, if you're interested in a red one.
Is it something that's together enough you can hold up to the camera real quick? Is that too much
got
trouble?
a few missing parts. Hang on, let me see.
Thank you. These things are great, and I wouldn't try to push her to do it if it wasn't beautiful stuff. And I'm going to bring a heater in 1 second here.
Check it out.
Ooh, there. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still working on it, and I'll even.
And for a 30% upcharge, you'll have the signatures of all the Right Night hosts here.
Hey.
Hey, for free, I'll throw in some of my own blood that the cat just took out of my hand.
It'll make it more authentic.
Make it more authentic.
Yeah.
I think I actually have a green one up online now. That's I think 4 people have it in their carts at this point, and that's all that I have left up of those right now, because apparently vampires are next. Just FYI.
They never left.
Yeah.
Okay.
And speaking of moving to the movie adaptations that we hate, can I go ahead and add mine?
Go, please.
Interview with a Vampire. Oh my god. Worst remake ever.
Have not seen it.
Well, actually, and it got worse as it went, I think, with that series. Because the first book, I always tell people, if you're going to read the books, read the first one first, because there's a gap between the publishing of the first one and the second one, and her writing style improved drastically. Same with the Pern series. Yeah. Book 1 to book 2, huge writing style difference. Actually, book 2 to book 3, but whatever.
No.
Yes, Aaron?
On Interview with the Vampire, I don't think it was that bad of an adaptation, but and having read the Vampire Chronicles
right
in order as they were released, you're absolutely right. Her style gets so much better, but one of the things that happens as she's going on is we've all seen men writing women badly. Anne Rice is the exact opposite. She writes men horribly. And Interview with the Vampire is one of those things where you just get pieces of that, but you don't get this as she's shifted all men to gay. And it's nothing wrong with that, but it's just a stylistic thing that happens in her books.
So it's almost no variety, is what I'm hearing here.
Yeah.
I think Tom Cruise was a bad choice as Lestat.
Yeah.
And then once they moved to the Queen of the Damned movie,
That was horrible.
I was just so completely lost and horrible. I'm like, I couldn't get through 5 minutes of it. Now, I would love to see them do an adaptation of her Witching Hour series.
Yeah.
Which was a fantastic, and this is Anne Rice for anybody who doesn't know, was a fantastic book series, and I think that would make a wonderful
and tied into the
Netflix
Vampire
show.
Chronicles loosely.
Yes.
It's the same
Yes.
world. You feel that, you know that. By the way, Rabin says Starship Troopers, and I will come back to that one.
I got one on that as well.
Yeah, we can come back. I don't want to cut us off of this if we're not done with this, but I definitely, Starship Troopers we could talk about. It's
And she is actually writing again. She's released a few more of the Lestat books, and she's got a Wolf series out now, Wolfman series type thing out now.
How is it?
That it's been a couple of years since I read the first book. I know she's added a couple more out since then, but I haven't read them. But I think it was off to a pretty decent start.
with the Vampire Chronicles, when she got into the later ones after the original trilogy, like Pandora and all the others, I felt like she was rewriting the same story with a different point of view, and you've got 60% of stuff, I've already read this, I've already seen this, and 40% new content blended in, and that was, for me, a bit of a letdown where I don't mind them touching on the events in the other books, but when you're retelling the other book from the other side of the room, not my thing.
Like I said, the Witching Hour would make an excellent, if they do it right, would make an excellent series, especially with the fantasy stuff that's out now. And it's been a long time since that was written, but I think it would still make a great adaptation.
And would you modernize it? Would you want to see it done set in this year? Well, not 2020, but you know.
I don't know that I would. I'll be honest
Leave
with
it
you,
in the
because
80s?
like
90s?
yeah, because what is the American Horror Story does a really great job with going back and doing stuff like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, maybe something along those lines, and kind of keeping it on track that way. Especially when they do their witch stuff where they bop around quite a bit.
So what about you, Michael? What do you hate?
What do I hate? I don't know. I don't have too strong an opinion on it. I did see recently, and talking about this has made me remember that I saw a trailer for, and this is the first to my knowledge. Well, I guess they did Reanimator, but the first modern Lovecraft adaptation, which is Color Out of Space. And has anyone seen that? I haven't seen it, but I saw the trailer. And it just the nature of cosmic horror, it really highlights for me how difficult that is to adapt. Right. Because when I saw that trailer and the color was like just pink, and I was like, nah, because they call it a color in the short story because there's no earthly word that's capable of describing it. That's the closest they can get to approximate what it is, because it's just this stuff, and they just end up calling it a color. But even then, it's like nothing anyone's ever seen before. Princess Sierra, was it good? That's my question, because when I heard Nick Cage was going to be in it, I thought, okay, he can do some good like mind melting freakouts.
Michael, before you go too far with that, I want to read some of the comments so anybody who's not actively viewing right now is caught up. So let's see here. Starship Troopers, we mentioned that. Danny says, I didn't like the adaptation for his Dark Materials on HBO. Had to watch like it's an alternate universe because several of the characters don't line up with the standard behaviors in the books. Part of that is the medium, part of that's creative licensing, directing, and she weeps about the movie Golden Compass. Jewel, good to see you. Lady Skipper has popped in, says, I've got all the cartoons of Starship Troopers. John mentions Dune, which we could sleep through that again if we need to. Rabin says,
Which
I mentioned
version?
before, but Sphere deserves a special mention. I feel the screenwriter missed the character and philosophical angles and the question if it was intentional. And then, Nick Cage is mentioned. Interesting to see Nick Cage in a Lovecraftian movie. Rabin refuses to acknowledge Dune. Supposedly when it works, we'll see. I agree. And Shara says, I have not seen it, but I know what you're talking about, Michael. I'll watch it and give you my best Siskel and Ebert review. Very good. Okay.
Thank you. I'm very curious.
Lady.
Excellent.
Any comments on any of these?
Thank you, Shira. Yeah, I'm really interested to see what it's like, because I think I did hear that someone quite enjoyed it. So
and this is about his Dark Materials, yeah?
Oh no, this is about the Color Out of Space.
Thank you.
But I remember when I started reading a Lovecraft collection, and I was thinking to myself, because I studied film, and I was wondering how I would try to adapt some of this stuff. And
you know what?
With
this, I think we need to wait till we have VR movies where you put on the goggles, because I feel like you need to have that presence behind you lurking the whole time. That tension.
You gotta. It's so hard to do.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Hitchcock does suspense extremely well.
Yeah.
Hitchcock probably could have pulled off a Lovecraftian movie because he builds that without. It's not overwhelming fear; it's terror building in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not scared in the moment; you're scared because everything's building up.
Then again,
Bird
Box.
This could be a whole topic on its own.
Yeah,
it's an interesting genre.
Bird Box, not Lovecraftian and not an adaptation, but the way the tension built in that, where you constantly have this air of oppression of something's waiting, something's lurking, and I think bringing that into a Lovecraftian situation, but also the descent into madness as you deal with something beyond what your mind can comprehend. I feel that's a heavy weight for a director and the actors to portray and to keep it cohesive where it's sellable. Perhaps as an independent film might be better, or hand it to an Asian film studio that does Asian horror.
Oh, like The Ring.
Yeah, like The Ring.
Yeah, there's some scary stuff.
Two Sisters. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, there's some scary stuff. I actually took one of the fun classes I got to take in college was a global horror class. So we got to look at how different countries do horror, and how at the time when these movies come out, it sort of signifies the fears of the time and the fears of that area. And then for our final exam, we could either write a big old essay, or we could create our own horror film. And it inspired by one of the directors that we watched, and I went kind of Hitchcockian with mine, and I did a film called Blind Date, and that was a cool, and that's the wonderful thing about horror, is that it's always low budget, or it's oftentimes low budget, and it's an interesting problem-solving mode that you get to be in. And I'd like to tell you a story about how I did one of these shots. So this is spoilers for my short film, but there's an eye removal scene, and I did a deep POV shot from inside the character's skull of his eye being removed. So you see the socket, and the way we did that was I took a blood orange and I hollowed it out, and then I put that up on the up on the lens like this. And then I had this internal POV shot looking up at the horror of who's doing this to that character, and that girl peering into the empty socket. It was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think you need to put that on your YouTube channel. We need to see that.
I've got it. I'll put it.
Link it. Yeah.
Should I send it?
Please. How long
it's on another channel. It's this will be exclusive to you guys, but
okay.
This is. I'll look it up real quick.
While he's doing that, do we want to talk about Dune or Starship Troopers or Martian or
Starship Troopers? Because I think you and I are going to contrast on this one.
Oh. Well, here's my thoughts on it. The movie is 3.5 chapters out of the book, and it takes all the message out of it, all the political meaning. It's 3 action chapters, and you lose the psychological oomph in the sense of society and what the book was actually pointing at that had action scenes in it.
Okay.
What's your thoughts there?
Well, actually, because I know a little bit of history about this, Paul Verhoeven, the same guy who did RoboCop and a few other very successful action movies in the 80s, he directed this movie unrelated to the book. He never read the book.
Yeah, well,
it is... no. We know he never read it because friggin' it's unrelated. But it was originally pitched as something else. It's a study on fascism. And they built this kind of world and this story arc. And then it was later noticed that it kind of lined up with Starship Troopers. So they licensed the book and overlaid it onto the movie. They're unrelated works. Yeah, it's kind of so.
I don't think
yes,
Peter
those
Jackson,
3 kind of action
I don't think Peter Jackson read Lord of the Rings or Hobbit either. I think he watched the animated movies and went, "I could redo that."
Well, no, but there was no animated or anything like that. There was nothing there. So Paul Verhoeven, he had this story based on fascism. He grew up friggin' in post-World War II, I think it was Poland. And he's like, okay, I'm going to make this, sets it in the sci-fi, and then, if you could actually check it out on the Wikipedia, but it's like the bugs of Outpost 13 or some crazy name like that, and ends up buying the license rights to make the movie because he had already written the script and he didn't want to get sued.
Real quick comment from Sapphire Fox here. This is relating back to something we were talking about earlier. That's where video games have a unique way of telling a story. Good Lovecraft-inspired games, or just good horror games in general, can put you in the mind of the person with the creature lurking right behind you. Bonus if it's in VR. That's
Resident Evil.
It's very good. Tempe?
I do have a question way off of the topic here.
Okay.
What's the process to go to get a book made to a video game? Is there somebody that knows anything about that, or a place to reference where to go for that? Aaron, do you know something that I don't know?
Okay, so whatever IP you have, your intellectual property, and this gets into the business side, so an agent, literary agent or movie agent or whatnot, can license it from you or option it is what it's really going to do. And they're going to say, hey, I like your book. I want to make it into something. I don't know what. I'd like to buy the option for 5 years. Here's $5,000, $10,000, $250 or something. But they own the rights to make that for that amount of time with additional option years.
Right.
Marvel sold off all the rights to their comic books when they were going bankrupt in the 90s, which is why Sony, Fox, and a variety of other people kind of own those rights to the characters. Universal, thank you. They owned those rights to the characters, and then they slowly got them back as films were not being made. So Fantastic Four, the reason that last Fantastic Four came out was because Fox was trying to hold on to the rights.
Yeah.
Whereas you run into these other ones where Paramount owns the rights to the Incredible Hulk, but not when Incredible Hulk appears in a team movie. So
it's Universal. They own the distribution rights.
Yeah.
So.
No, Michael.
Yeah, I've been giving that some thought lately, and I'm wondering if that's a route I might want to consider with a piece of work that I'm, kicking around.
It's interesting. So, I imagine it's the same. It's a similar process, just like Aaron said. There's the option. You might want to look into like entertainment lawyer. That's another term you might want to look up. And then if they have you on the project, then creative consultant is probably a term that you would want to check out for
payroll
yourself.
Term.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, completely off tangent.
Well,
this is totally on tangent.
Also keep in mind,
video games
you're looking at 5 years production time minimum because of just everything that has to go into creating a video game. And also depends if you're looking at a ongoing MMO situation online, or if you're looking at a single disc that somebody could pop in their console.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
You know the old saying, selling like hotcakes? What does that even mean? What is a hotcake anyway? They should change it to selling like Hondas, because right now Hondas are selling faster than ever. Probably because they're so rugged, long-lasting, and fuel-efficient. And if you want one, you should get to your local Honda dealer right away. Check out the 8-passenger Pilot, or maybe the adventurous Passport. But you gotta do it fast, because Hondas are selling like, well, Hondas. New models are arriving now. Don't wait. See your local Honda dealer today.
There'll be different production times and ongoing things as they add different money-making ways of adding, value packs or extra material, or even continuing the story on if you've made more books, where now an online game can give you that next additional material, whereas a console game would have to create another game for the next movie, which they have a lot of groundwork for. Go ahead.
And the reason I asked that is because that's how The Witcher got made into a series. It was actually a video game, a book made into a video game, and then into the series. Which is great to make the jump, because it's like, because it's not a path I would have considered. I would have always thought the video game would have come after the series, but to do that first and then jump to the series was an interesting path that
Lots of people didn't realize that it was a book before it was a video game, because the video game was so popular.
Right,
exactly.
Rabin says game development with IC is rough, as mechanics and content should really be connected. So there's a little. Now, Mike, I saw you nodding a lot as Aaron was going on. Did you have more information to add to this?
Well, I'm just remembering parts of the process. I've met people that have been optioned at cons, and I asked them a few questions and looked it up and learned some stuff. And optioning is the big term for anyone who's a writer who's looking into that, or anyone who's just interested in the behind the scenes of that. It's called buying the option. So they have the option to make it. And some authors, they get scared if the option is a low number, but it's just the option. And a lot of times what happens is when they buy it, they're basically reserving so that no one else can swoop in on the property. And then when they go ahead and make it, there's a percentage that the original creator will get based on the size of the budget.
Aaron?
Yeah.
On that note, take a look at Winston Groom, the guy that wrote Forrest Gump.
Mm-hmm.
You got to watch out between gross profits, gross revenue, a payday as a creative consultant, net, all these things, because you've got things called Hollywood accounting, where Hollywood accounting is basically where, hey, I'm a production studio, but I hire a print and advertising, P&A, firm that I own to advertise this. And then I upcharge that amount, and it causes your budget to go way, way up, so that you never actually make a profit in the movie. Forrest Gump has never made a profit, so Winston Groom never got paid on it.
Wow, that's horrible.
It is.
Well, he wrote the second book, and he didn't sell it to him. So that's kind of the trade-off. But as artists, we've got our rights, our copyright on it, and you are voluntarily giving up those rights, selling those rights, doing these things.
You gotta
read the contract.
Yeah, you gotta be very careful about that.
Quick side note: this book and this world. At one point in time, I was approached by a group of co-workers who were geeks who wanted to make an MMO out of this, and we actually started developing that. But because people are young and easily distracted, it never came to fruition. But yeah, that was something 15 years ago I was looking at.
Well, here's an interesting, it is interesting that even if you get if you get an option that's ongoing, it could be great marketing. A great story about that. Do you remember Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympians?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, you know this story. So he comes out with this book that I think he wrote mainly because he wanted something to read to his kid, and then fairly quickly he was approached by some scouts who said, "Hey, we think we can do something with this down the road." And he thinks, "Yeah, I've never, I don't think I'll get this opportunity again." So he signs the contract and they buy the rights. With that marketing, he puts soon to be big motion picture. And that helps this upswell. That gets it insanely popular really fast. It takes a while for the movie to come out, and then eventually the movie comes out and it's not super well received. But the fact that it was going to be that it was in talks to be made into a film at all was excellent marketing, and it was kind of this like circular effect of bringing the book up. So
Wheel of Time
it became
has the
popular
same
as a result
situation where Wheel of Time, a very popular fantasy series by Robert Jordan and finished by Brandon Sanderson, had sold their movie rights and nothing was done with it. And literally in the last 24 hours at 2 a.m. with no announcement, the company who owned it put some crap hour-long thing out on some vague channel going, "Oh, we did something with it. We still have these rights. We get to continue owning this because we did that."
Yep. Well, there was a bad Fantastic Four movie of the 80s that did that too.
There was. Couple of comments real quick, if I may. Rabbit says, I've dabbled in game development. It's a fascinating field and parallels writing in many ways. Danny says, oh, cool. MMOs are hard to make. When you have the lore and universe ready to go, it does make it a lot easier. But then you have to figure out mechanics, and that's where things get even more interesting. So, other things, because we have complained so much about adaptations. Let's focus on that for the last 20 minutes. Aaron, did you finish your thoughts on Starship Troopers?
Well, Starship Troopers, the movie, delivers what it promises to deliver. It's a movie that's thematically about fascism. If you take a look at all those, the advertisements that take place in it, they're shot-for-shot ads of Nazi Germany. It's one of those, once you separate the movie from the book is great on its own. I love the book, but you go back and read it now, it's kind of dry. Right. If you watch the movie, not having read the book, it delivers what it promises. Right. Now, when you link the two together artificially, they're horrible. They're both horrible. People that like the book don't like the movie. People that like the movie don't like the book. But that comes into the licensing and selling the rights and things like that. But I guarantee that movie sold a lot of books.
Yeah. Now,
that book sold a lot of movie tickets.
How about Dune? Does anybody have strong opinions or any opinions on Dune before we jump into other stuff?
I have no opinion.
I have watched multiple versions. Go ahead, Aaron.
It was a hard read.
It was.
Don't get me wrong, it was groundbreaking at the time, but it's a hard read now. And I think the nostalgia factor really came into play when they made the multiple movies off of it.
Right.
Our Sting version, they were taking advantage of, best-selling novel, but the repeat of it, somebody owned the rights and wanted to put it out. It's good in its way, but you can only do so much with the material that's out there.
Well, they're redoing it again, so yeah, we'll see about that. By the way, a quick shout out for Danny here. She says, I've written video game missions for MMOs, and I'm working on a visual novel. Ideally, you write both of those, more like a script than a novel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, Word. Word says Dune is written more like a textbook than a novel. Okay. So, any other ones we want to just really rant about? We can touch on Lord of the Rings, where they pulled...
Lord of the Rings is a great example because Lord of the Rings is done very, very well, but it pulls in stuff that's not there. Right. And then you look at The Hobbit, which is a horrible example because they pull in stuff that's not there.
Right. Well, they pulled some stuff from, and I'm going to mispronounce it. I always do. The similarity. Similarity. It's very similar. And that was his almost textbook of his world. It was all the backstory and crap and history that he wrote and set aside kind of as his personal notes. And they put it out there almost.
Oh, and you are...
Go ahead.
You're a fool if you don't call your expanded works the Sivart Relian.
Good.
It's I have all that behind me on the shelf where you see all the 3-ring binders just full of different... Which side is it on? I don't know if it shows on camera, but yeah. They also left a ton of stuff out of Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings MMO is fantastic, though. My problem with the Lord of the Rings MMO is the color palette. It is all earth tones, and it's hard to separate things visually. I wish they had been a little more dramatic in their colorization of it. That was actually my biggest complaint about the game itself. But
contrast is important.
Oh yeah, I mean, take a look at and just to delve into that for just a half a second, your WoWs are very color centric. Your EverQuest had a great color palette across expansions. Lord of the Rings kind of set it into a realistic world.
Bring your mic up.
Oh, sorry. It set it into a realistic world, but that doesn't work well inside that medium because it's hard to see, especially if you're playing in a dark room with a Dr. Pepper.
had to be Chris. So let's see here. What other stuff? Tempe, what movies or series have you cringed with?
Honestly, if I read the book, I don't usually go see the movie, and vice versa. Does that make sense?
Something I've said is I'll always watch the movie first now because the book is so much more. It fills in the world for me.
Right.
Which sometimes works against me because then you have the visualization of those actors as the characters in the book, and it doesn't meld well.
Yeah.
And it throws the whole thing off if a character's described one way in the book, and then that person is totally different in the movie. It's all you can focus on throughout the entire thing, and it's just like I can't. It's not worth it. So I try not to do that a lot. Now, I'm telling everyone else, read my books and then watch the TV series when it comes out. But it's not something I usually do. But I don't take that time for myself to go that much. I go see a few movies. I'll go see a Bond movie when it comes out. Mm-hmm. That's one of the few movies I will go see. But it has to be something that really, really interests me before I'll even go to the movie theater to watch something. So, especially now that my kids are older and where I can, where I have to go with them.
What about
I love how you say theater.
Theater.
The cinema.
The cinema.
So what about you, Michael?
It's a great point.
Go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's great that she brings up James Bond because we've had 30 different movies with 30 different portrayals of this classic character, in addition to the books that came out. And it's Daniel Craig is a different Bond than Sean Connery was.
Right.
And then George Lazenby. Friggin', they all were great in their own right. And the world kind of shifts and changes as we're doing it. I went through and I read some of the James Bond novelizations during that gap where they weren't making anything. Not the Ian Fleming ones, but some of the other ones that were done after him.
Ian Fleming.
That's right. He's dead.
No, we're out of his books.
Oh yeah, that too. But you get this James Bond who isn't necessarily the same womanizer that you see on the screen. Not that Daniel Craig is either. He's kind of the lost love type based on his first movie moving forward. But they shifted him back into this kind of action-centric role because writing by committee would be my guess.
And one that I may actually go back and read the book that they made a series out of. I may go back and read The Night Manager because I feel like that I probably missed a lot that's in the book that wasn't on screen. And that was with Tom Hiddleston and Hugh Laurie that was out on TNT a couple of years ago. And it was a really good series, but I feel like there's probably a lot more that I missed. So I may actually pull that one up and read it.
That makes sense. Danny says, I read the book first because I don't want the preconception from the screen, someone else's imaginative interpretation. Same thing with music videos. I listen to the song first, so I have a chance to visualize on my own before I see how someone else has visualized it. With music videos, what I love is when you have a song that you like and you enjoy it and you imagine these things, and then the video has a whole other layer of story on top of it that it's woven through the song. And Fox says, I like both unless one of them is just awful, but I typically view them as separate entities, which I think is wise, especially since they're really different ways to translate the same ideas. Things that work with a book won't work for a movie and vice versa. And I think of Marvel Comics for this. We had the comics that I grew up with, and in the 90s we had multiple TV series. I'll use X-Men as an example. You had these... Right. And I remember people bitching when the movies came out. They're like, it's not like the cartoon. And I'm like, but the cartoon's not like the comics. And then we have the reiteration, the rebirth of X-Men with First Class.
For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided exceptional care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to give children and healthcare heroes a reason to believe this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday.
You know the old saying, selling like hotcakes? What does that even mean? What is a hotcake anyway? They should change it to selling like Hondas, because right now Hondas are selling faster than ever. Probably because they're so rugged, long-lasting, and fuel-efficient. And if you want one, you should get to your local Honda dealer right away. Check out the 8-passenger Pilot, or maybe the adventurous Passport. But you gotta do it fast, because Hondas are selling like, well, Hondas. New models are arriving now. Don't wait. See your local Honda dealer today.
Which I think was really well done for the first couple movies, and now the later ones is just so special effect packed. It's kind of like, it's not about the characters anymore. It's about, let's make something.
Well, the technology's catching up, I think.
Yeah, well, I think because the technology is catching up, they're skimping on the storyline, which that was something about the X-Men comics is you did have characters and their lives and their events, and that's what you clung to. They just happen to have superpowers.
Right.
Days of Future Past was so good.
Did you like it?
The story or the
movie adaptation.
Okay.
I know it's very different because Wolverine is very involved, but Wolverine sells, and they did a good job of making him important in the film, and Mystique as well in that film.
Right. It's
that was a great adaptation. They're completely separate stories.
Yeah.
In the first one, Kitty Pryde goes back to before she had her mental blocks, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
There, in the movie, we've got Wolverine going back to a previous version of himself.
Yeah.
To stop all this.
Well, in the original one, you had Kitty Pryde going forward in the comics.
No. It was old Kitty Pryde goes back.
Okay.
Mm.
I just remember Illyana with the portals in the 80s opening up to the future where we have the concentration camps.
Mm-hmm.
It's I didn't.
Yep, that's the opening of the story. Yep.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. I didn't remember the older Kitty Pryde, but it has been 35 years or so.
Yeah.
So since I've read it, it's So yeah, I think whether it's music, videos, comics, books, it's important to walk in expecting it to be different and cherish the similarities instead of condemning the differences.
Oh yeah. Well, Emmy, freaking my wife, my lovely wife of 20 some odd years, she just reread Ready Player One. She read it immediately prior to going seeing the movie, and then was mad because there's nothing the same.
Right.
She's like, "Why did I read this?" It wasn't that the movie was bad or the book was bad. It was just that they were so different that they may as well have been
Right. Well,
completely unrelated.
what's his name? The director that did Back to the Future. What's his name, Aaron? Michael Tempe.
Zemeckis.
Zemeckis. He purposely pulled a lot of the references out because the book referred to a lot of his material and his movies, and he felt like he was building his own shrine to himself, and he's like, I don't want the movie to be about my work. I want it to be about this. But yeah, I haven't read the book. I am curious about it. A good book then, Aaron, I'm guessing?
It's enjoyable. It's good because it makes all these references to pop culture and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very simple story. It's a fast read. It's
Nice.
enjoyable. But thematically, thematically it's the same as the movie. content-wise, it is not.
Okay. And
So-
if
It
you
came out fairly recently, right?
yeah.
It's one of the older ones. The book itself is probably 5-10 years old. I think like 2005 maybe.
And by the way, that writer's success story is a writer's wet dream. Basically, he hadn't finished the book, sent it off to multiple publishing companies. They got into a bidding war over it. It was purchased, and
Yeah.
before he finished the book, they had sent it off to Hollywood, and it got into another bidding war. And it was his first book.
Interesting.
2011, by the way, on that one.
2011. See, that's not too long ago.
No, but that is.
Yeah. There's a similar situation with The 100. Does anyone watch The 100 on the CW?
Oh, I gave up on the 100 after last season. It
I
was
tell you what,
so
Jen-
bad last season.
I tell you what, I love that show.
Yeah, I've watched
I
that
loved
show,
it till last season.
so much happened. You and me should talk about that show. I watch it with my mom.
Go ahead.
That show, so much happened.
I watched it with my son. He's the one that got me started on it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, after last season, he and I both just gave up on it.
It's I was cool with it. They changed stuff up between every season so much, and I was enjoying it because I was watching a lot of shows at the time that were very slow.
Mm-hmm.
And this show, it's like guess what? Boom, boom, boom. 3 people are dead. Boom, boom. These people are in a relationship, and it's like whoa.
They're eating each other now.
They're eating each other. It's so fun. Oh man,
Not in a romantic way, I'm guessing.
I love geeking out on that. But the interesting thing about that is that, similar to Ready Player One, the rights to the film, I think it happened, and I think I'm remembering this right, that the author submitted it to a contest, and within the contest, one of the judges, it was like just a literary contest, but one of the judges had a connection to film, and they wanted to buy the rights before the book was out, so they bought the rights, and they had basically like a part of the book and the concept, I think. And then they went ahead making it based on that concept. But what the book was more, I think, more of a romantic kind of like love triangle kind of thing. And like episode 2, one of the main characters is just dead.
Right.
In the film. And what the film version turned into, what the TV series turned into, is like this high stakes sci-fi thing with lots of drama and all sorts of stuff. So it's 2 completely separate entities, and yeah,
like
so that's a
Wall-E
really
remake.
interesting example of like from concept, like even before it was done gestating. Like I think the first half of the first season covers the first 2 books. And then from then on, it's a completely different show.
It's very much based on, what's the one where the kids take over? What's the name of that
Lord of the
book?
Flies?
You know, from Lord of the Flies. It starts
Yes.
out very Lord of the Flies, and these kids are having to survive from space coming down to Earth after it's been, you know, nobody's been on it for years and years and years because of, was it radioactive?
Right.
Radiation,
Overheads or
nuclear
something, yeah.
fallout.
It felt like
Yeah,
Wall-E meets
yeah.
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah. it was the first few seasons were really, really good, and I was caught up in. But last season, I was just like, I don't know
I
that I
got
can
so
do it.
hooked on it. I know so few people who really like the show, but I find it so much fun. And
It's coming back again in a couple of weeks.
it's the last season.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll have to work myself up for it, I guess.
I also I like the style of post-apocalypse and or like dystopian, where it's so far in the future that it's a second past. So like at a certain point, it was like there were these kingdoms and stuff, but they still had, you know, cars and guns, and but it felt very medieval.
Cars
So-
that run. Cars
Yeah.
that run.
Yeah, but the show moves too quick to worry about it. So people are dying, people are eating each other.
And if I can read a couple comments here. Danny says, I watch it on Netflix, but it's one of those shows where I want to smack many people upside the head. And she
Understandable.
Word says, for 100, I got partway through the second season before I got bored with the show. And Danny says, these are crazy neat paths for an author to take, though. And they are. And that brings us back to the root for the last 5 minutes. It's as writers, I think any of us would be pleased to be approached with such a thing. Now, what happens from there doesn't mean we won't lead to heartbreak, frustration, or celebration. But
Look at Aaron.
I don't know what that means, Aaron. Is that
I
the
have
celebration?
one goal.
Aaron is a whore. You're gonna approach me. $20 is $20.
Yeah. Here's what I will say. If anything of mine does get made, something I want to work into the contract is I am allowed to air interviews, like sitting around a table having dinner with directors or stars or whatever. Or even if I can't air it, just to be able to sit in a room with these people that we've seen on the screen and interact with them on a real level and see how much they match character personalities that they've played before and how real they are. You know, the comparison between Tom Cruise, from what I understand, is very much like Tom Cruise in the movies. He's a bit of a dick. You know, I hear the same thing about Bruce Willis, and then you hear about these other people who are just like, I've heard Sandra Bullock on podcasts before, and she is just a sweetheart, and I would love to be able to have that experience. Or I'd love to have a dinner with Stephen King and George R.R. Martin, because I've seen them interviewing each other on one thing, which you can find that on YouTube, and that is delightful as they ask questions of each other, comparing, well, like we do here, but it's those guys that we all know by name and face and work. Question for Tempe. Tempe?
Okay.
Is that one goal, Henry and Tom staying over during the filming?
I wouldn't turn it down. Let's just say that.
I'll tell you what, I would make them
and
breakfast.
I might even hire a cook for the night.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do it for the story.
Actually, Henry can cook. He's been posting all these pictures
Henry's
of all
gonna
this stuff
cook for
cooking.
you.
I'm like, wouldn't that be wonderful?
See, and that would be great also. Just imagine that evening with these folks, you know, on any level. It's not even, just to interact and get their points of views, and, you know, if they've read the books versus what they're producing right now or played the video game or whatever, and to get their feedback on that sort of thing. And I don't know, I think that'd just be put them to work, says Danny. I think
Absolutely.
that would just be amazing fun. Any closing thoughts on the topics? Aaron?
Just one. Every interpretation. I don't want to use the word adaptation because it leads you down a path. It's one of those, oh, this is the original and this is that. Every interpretation can be valid in some way or form. We grab almost any of these things. I remember reading the novelization of episode 1 of Star Wars, and I hate that movie. Absolutely hate the movie. But the novelization gives me so much more context and things like that, and that was written after the guy already read the script. So he inserts things that we can't see there from a book perspective, and we see that also take place in the movie or the visual medias. There's some great comic books that do that as well. What is it? Umbrella Academy's out there right now, and it's not the same but it's great. Or friggin' we mentioned Series of Unfortunate Events, Harry Potter's, and you will get people that are movies, books, that kind of thing. But they're all great in their own kind of right.
Yeah, it reminds me, I had read this fairly recently, and I forgot who said it, but that everyone's experience of a book is unique to them, because this is an entertainment that's beamed right into your mind and then blended with your own experiences, and so everyone's mental movie is something that's totally unique, which is really neat with literature. So with film, it's kind of like that incarnation. It's that interpretation, like you said, Aaron. And I remember when I had those actors read my play, and they cut out a whole section, and I really liked what they did. I kind of liked how it flowed without that section. So when I eventually reread it and publish it, I think I'm going to follow that beat, follow that pacing, because it's interesting. You'll never know what when you allow it to enter someone else's mind and then be played back for you. It's kind of a neat thing. and see how people interpret your characters.
Tempe, any closing thoughts?
Like Michael said, it's a fine line. What I see in my mind is not necessarily what some people will see in their mind, but I figure, you know what, as the writer, it's my playground.
Okay.
That's what I'm going for.
For my closing thoughts, I'll say, remember, it's all about the money. Put out that warning sign. It's all about budget. It's all about money. And that is something somebody else is controlling. And I want to read a few comments and just really say thumbs up to our community right here that's joining us after reading these comments. So Danny says, absolutely, there's so many perspectives on writing I'd love to mind. I was able to sit down with Gaiman about 10 years ago, and that was just the coolest ever. Word says, I got to talk to David Drake for a while. We had a great conversation about how much the light in the hotel elevators sucked. By the way, Danny does clarify, he was here for a poetry slam, and I stayed late because I moved slow and ended up at dinner. Conventions have been fun for meeting people, but there's not always an opportunity for craft talk. So, yeah, cherish the moments right now that we're all experiencing, no matter what the future brings, success or the other side of it, and just appreciate these small moments that we're getting right now, because we don't know which one of the four of us or all of us will be at where we'll be in 10 years. And we are interacting with Danny and Word and John and all these others, and we don't know where they'll be. So remember your community. Remember the joys we had talking to each other as we work towards our goals. So good night, everybody. Let's do some closing music.
You guys are
Thanks
awesome.
for coming.
Get out of here. Oh, join us tomorrow night. Stealing for Survival.
The other writers,
D&D.
content creators, and all of
Very
our
different show.
amazing people for our discussion here on Writing Night. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right now.
Follow all the writers on their social media, guys. Good night, everybody.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.